Welcome back. My name is Thomas A. Bushnell. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in Idaho, Washington, and California. And today I'm going to be talking about Medicaid eligibility. This has nothing to do with Medicaid estate recovery. Remember, the most surefire way to have no Medicaid estate recovery is never take Medicaid. That's the surefire way. Now, the numbers I'm going to be using here today are specific to Idaho. The numbers in Washington, California may be different, but the ideas and a lot of the concepts are going to be the same. But this is an Idaho-specific discussion today, but you can get some education from this, and if you need help, find a good licensed attorney who does elder law and estate planning in your local area to get the specific numbers. So here we go. To be eligible for Medicaid, they look at your income and they look at your resources. Most of us, we always call them assets. Well, for Medicaid, they call them resources. Let's start on our resources side. This is all income side. There's two types of resources, countable and excluded. Remember, this is for Medicaid eligibility, and if you're eligible and you get Medicaid, unless you take advantage of one of the major exceptions, which I'll show you in the next and final video, if you don't take advantage of one of them, then those folks over there at Medicaid Estate Recovery are going to come after your estate if you take Medicaid after the age of 55. So we have countable and excluded. What are excluded resources? Your house, the land it sits on, and a contiguous piece to it. Another piece that's contiguous, not a piece in this end of the county and one in another jurisdiction or even 500 feet away. This house and one contiguous, all the contents, household furnishings, and one vehicle up to a value of $878,000. Now this $878,000 is a structural clue, if you remember that from creative writing back in school. This number is going to come up again in our next video on how you can pass on $878,000 to one of your children, still get Medicaid, still get nursing home care, and totally avoid the Medicaid estate recovery. That's for the next video. So I want you to see that number there because it's going to come back in the next video. So what if I make a lean-to off here and I put my airplane over there? No, I don't own an airplane. But if I did, I put it there. No, that doesn't work, okay? Household furnishings, not your $150,000 RV, not your Cessna 182. Nope, you're not going to be able to do that. Those are countable resources, not excluded. Up to $878,000 for a couple, okay? For a single person, I believe it would be half of that. Now, on the countable resources, how much in resources can you have? Well, that depends. Good lawyer answer, that depends. Are you single or are you married? Let's say you're a widow or you're a widower, you're a single person, you're allowed $2,000 in countable assets. Well, if you have a second home, that's a countable asset. You're not going to be eligible for Medicaid. If you have more than $2,000 in the bank, you're not eligible for Medicaid. Okay? You have too much in resources. IRAs, 401ks, and the like, retirement accounts. Are they resources or are they income? Well, once again, that depends. If you're taking your monthly distributions, if you're taking your mandatory minimum distributions or your minimum distribution, then it's an income. If you have it over here and you're not 71 or 70 and a half and you're not taking your mandatory distributions and it's still here, then it could be counted as a resource. So you need to make sure before you ever apply, if you apply for Medicaid, you need to look at each item with someone who knows what they're talking about to make sure that you qualify. Now, if you're married, it's quite a bit different. What it is, and you can see it on the sheet that should be up on the screen, is if you make $0 to $25,200, if you have $25,284 in assets, countable assets or less, you still qualify if you're married. If you have $25,285 up to $126,420, you can keep half of that money. So half of it has to be spent down. And if you have more, well, you're not even going to qualify. You have to get down and spend yourself down. That's what's called the spend down. And giving it to your children is not one of the options you can do. We'll get to that one in the next video. Now, on the income side, so that's the resource side. If you have other things, for example, a promissory note, that's a resource. I mentioned land, investment accounts other than retirement accounts from which you're drawing money, those are all resources. On your income side, if you're married, the two of you can make this much, $4,626. Each spouse can make $2,313. And you can see on the sheet there, it talks about how you can juggle that around a little bit. I'm not going to get into all that right here. So what happens if you're over the limit? Okay, you're over the limit, you're a single person, you make more than $2,313 a month, but you're in long-term care, which costs $8,000 a month, if we saw from the previous video, or maybe 10 or 12. You're kind of in a no man's land here because you don't have enough to pay for your nursing home, yet you're not eligible for Medicaid. So for that window, they've made a thing called a Miller Trust. It comes from Miller versus Missouri. I wish the law wasn't this way. I wish they just said you could make up to the amount of what it costs for your care and you would be eligible. But for some reason, they're not doing that. So instead, we have to do Miller Trust, which means lawyers make a little more money. Gee, go figure. So if you make over the limit, for example, if you're single, and what you make is under the cost of care, for example, an $8,000 a month nursing home, we can open what's called a Miller Trust, and I can make you eligible on the income side. How do we do it? Well, they take your money each month, however much it is. Let's say that it's $5,313 is what you make a month, because I like easy math. What they would do is I'm going to add that, make that 5 and make that 53, okay? 5,353. What would happen is all but $40 would go into the Miller Trust. You'd get $40 a month. That's what you'd get. Then the 5,313 would go into there, and that then would go over to pay the nursing home. And then you take $8,000 minus this, and that's how much Medicaid would pay each month. Medicaid would make up the difference. Using a Miller Trust makes you eligible if your income is greater than this income limit, but less than the cost of care. Convoluted? Yes. Okay, but that's the way it is today in May of 2020. So this is the Medicaid eligibility. In our next video, we're going to be putting these things together, taking advantage of this number here and taking advantage of the rules, having one of our children help us, and I will show you how you can get the care you need and still pass on $878,000 worth of assets to one of your children.